I look at a lot of pictures of warships and warship-related things, and I've encountered a few AI-generated images of battleships. I didn't generate or title any of these images. Well, other than the one that's labeled as made by Stable Diffusion, I can't tell you exactly how these were made. I can just show you the image and the description of the image from where I found it. What I can say for certain is that all 8 I've come across so far are absolute garbage. To start with this YouTube thumbnail of Jean Bart, I have to admit that I've made baffling mistakes in identifying ships and images, like calling this picture of Richelieu Jean Bart, or this USS Massachusetts, and the US Archives even has this footage of USS Arkansas labeled as USS Texas. But I don't think that leaving it up to a computer is the answer here. This part might be shocking given how not Jean Bart this vessel is and the X-49 Night Raven in the background, but this is actually the best ship we're going to see today, at least in my opinion. The hull form is fine, the turrets kind of vanish on the left side but aren't entirely fused together, and some features of the ship are more nondescript than complete nonsense, and there's even an actual hull number, despite the French not actually doing that. The rest of the fleet, the air arm, and a few unfortunate kayakers are real bad, but it feels like it's trying to imitate this sort of image at least. 2 details I'd like you to remember are the general shape of the superstructure and bridge, as well as the existence of the fire explosion thing behind the vessel. Going immediately about as bad as it gets, this image is supposed to represent the Iowa class. As much as it gets my patriotic feelings going similarly to the thought of oil wells and cheeseburgers, this is slop. While the statue of Jesus Liberty with the Glock Retta is a nice touch, we've had over 8 decades with the Iowas. You can find essentially any genre of image you'd like of them. Here's USS New Jersey with spray over her bow. Here's USS Wisconsin with a New York landmark. Look! Missouri with a bunch of flags, and I was even able to find 2 images of USS Iowa in a storm with a US flag in frame. This smooth gal is what Stable Diffusion thinks a 21st century upgrade of HMS Vanguard would look like. I don't know what most of this stuff is supposed to be, and I don't think it matters, but take a look at the superstructure. That doesn't look anything like HMS Vanguard, and there's no other indication on this vessel that any piece of this nonsense was actually generated from any understanding of what the original looked like. We do, however, have the return of the random fire explosion, which you can also see here on España. I have no explanations. This is nothing like the original vessel or anything Spain ever operated. I don't know what that is in the background or why there's an alien attack happening. I'm moving on. This depiction of HMS Dreadnought is actually the first one I found, and clued me off to be watchful for this particular genre of AI-generated content. Unlike a lot of the other images we've seen so far, there's a lot of detail, and some of it is even vaguely correct, like the smoke coming off the stacks, but most of it is garbage. The 4 turrets are obviously nowhere close to the actual vessel, but it's almost like it can't decide what's going on. They're super firing, but connected, maybe individually mounted guns, and anything to the rear of the ship is some mix between main guns, secondaries, and perhaps torpedo net booms. All the other nonsense off the side of the ship is not worth talking about, but again, note the bridge. Continuing, a very important note. I'll argue to my death that the Kirovs aren't battleships, but I do want to include this depiction of one, mostly to show you that AI doesn't seem to quite get other vessels, too. It's not just battleships. While our now familiar orange and smoke in the background might indicate that this is actually the carrier Admiral Kuznetsov, and the ornithopter says we're on Dune, the hull number says... I don't know. Well, the radome festoon superstructure is vaguely like one of these nuclear-powered missile barges, the... 3 barrels at the front should tell you that whatever made this has no idea what's actually supposed to be going on here. Speaking of not knowing what's going on, here's the absolute worst image I have for you today. This is actually supposed to be a battleship, despite how it looks at first glance, and I'll give everyone a second to guess which one it's supposed to be, and here's a hint. It's one of the ones that still exists. It's USS Texas. No part of this looks like any part of USS Texas in any configuration of hers at any point in time. This is pathetic. USS Texas has existed for over 110 years at this point, and like the Iowas, you can find essentially whatever image of her that you desire on the internet, and if that's not enough, go to Texas and take a photo yourself if you really need to. Cooling down a bit, here's a Yamato class with, yeah, that's a flag. I can't tell you what those jets of flame are, but I think that's supposed to be a casemate, which Yamato and Musashi didn't have. Maybe those are supposed to be casemates too? There's almost a weird desperation to this image. There's very few real images of the class of battleships this is supposed to represent, and there's a struggle to have enough detail to even pretend what this is. To go past the raw fact that these images are bad and sad, why are these generative AI depictions how they are? I'm not an AI expert, nor do I want to be, but from the basics I understand, generative AI can get better at making accurate images in three ways: a better model, a larger quantity of images, and those images being higher quality. Most battleships in history are long gone, with only 9 making it to the 21st century as museums, so quantity and quality is a huge problem if those two factors are needed to produce images that don't look like this. Plus, none of the ones we still have put to sea anymore. You can't get new images of, say, HMS Majestic, and the ones that do exist are crusty and in black and white. Of the battleships that do exist that you can still take pictures of, 7 of them are US fast battleships. I think this has led to the superstructures I've been mentioning in the AI images at least seeming to take more after a North Carolina, South Dakota, or Iowa than anything else. There's a good chance that someone taking a tour of USS Iowa might take more photos in their time there than we have of the entire life of the previous USS Iowa. I'm not entirely convinced that this is the only factor in how the superstructures and bridges of the AI ships look, as the ones on other late model battleships like the Littorios or Bismarck aren't too dissimilar. But I don't think an AI is ever going to spit out something with a lower superstructure like a Nassau, because there just aren't that many pictures of similar ships. I also found this last image. There's just too many weird angles on this vessel for me to think that it's real, despite it seeming to be a period engraving, and those combined with the squared off smokestack really convinced me that no actual human could design such a colossal disaster. You also see the AI creating a whole bunch of nonsense holes in the side of the ship, something that you can see in the other images. There's even a sailing ship in the background that really takes you out of it, and I'm shocked that whoever was lazy enough to generate this image left that detail in. Anyways, if you know of anyone actively using AI-generated or other genuinely awful depictions of warships, let me know about it and where to find it. If I see enough, I'll probably make another video, so subscribe to see that if you want, and thanks for watching.